Okay, we are very delighted to keynote the inaugural Connect to Investors Conclave 2022 at GIEC Chennai. I'm Professor Raj Jaswa, and with me is Dr. Nitin Mehta. We are going to explore entrepreneurship opportunities in India in the new global order. This topic has intrigued and excited both of us for the last few months because the world as we have known it post-World War II is rapidly changing. For example, we had rule-based geopolitics, free trade in a flat world, dollar-based global financial systems, and global multinational corporations built on global technology platforms from the US like Google Search, Android operating system, social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram, etc. On February 24, 2022, the world changed and a new global order emerged. And there is nothing that excites entrepreneurs more than massive disruption. But before we get started, we would like you to get to know us a little bit more. So Nitin, can you tell the attendees about your involvement in entrepreneurship and the Indian business ecosystem in particular?
Raj, I'll be delighted to. I was fortunate to have come to the US as a teenager almost 50 years ago. So most of my education, my entrepreneurial experience has been grounded mainly in US and Europe. 40 years ago, I also became one of the first venture capitalists of Indian origin in Silicon Valley. And so as a result, I was lucky to see the emergence of venture capital industry, which was nascent industry at that time.
Wow.
And how it was instrumental in nurturing and scaling entrepreneurs in many, many ways. In my journey, I was able to back many entrepreneurs, including investing in many companies such as WebEx, Invisalign, that's become now $30 billion company, Viking River Cruise and Viking Cruise Lines, which has become about 15 billion. And most of these have really flourished over many decades. And today, I continue my serial entrepreneurial journey, and through my son's fund called Green Oaks Capital, which is very active in the US and in India. In India, we have investments and had investments in Flipkart, Ola, Oyo Rooms, and maybe dozens of others. And we are delighted to be participating in Indian entrepreneurial system. Now, my own passion is to help entrepreneurs build large companies. I've co-founded a cybersecurity company called Color Tokens, which has significant presence in India. We have a very talented team in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, and have clients throughout India, including Godrej, Kim's Hospital in Hyderabad, Hyderabad airports, certainly Omega Health, Biocon, and the like. But what I'm really proud of is co-founding of an entrepreneurial organization called TIE. It stands for the Indus Entrepreneurs, which is now has over 60 chapters in the world and almost 10 or so in India. It's an important source of ideas for entrepreneurs. I hope many of our listeners, Raj, in Tamil Nadu will attend functions in Chennai TIE chapter. And Raj, I know that you had been president of Silicon Valley TIE and have had incredible serial entrepreneur journey yourself. Tell us, the attendees, about your involvement in entrepreneurship and in Indian business ecosystem.
You know, first of all, I just got a thought, which is your son made it to the Midas list this year.
That's right.
Congratulations. I think he was number 9 on the Midas list. This is the list of the top 40 venture capitalists, and I think he's not even 40.
Top 100.
It is fantastic what your son has done, and I think it's like it runs in your family. That's how I would say. But first, I want to share my direct connection to Salem and Chennai. in 1998, we started the Selectica Chennai subsidiary. I'd started the company in 1996, and 2 years later, we started our Selectica Chennai subsidiary. And we decided to do, and I think we were the first to do cutting edge artificial intelligence in Java, in Chennai, and our Chennai team had brilliant engineers who helped Selectica become a quintacorn. And quintacorn is actually stands for $5 billion. So it's like a unicorn multiplied by 5. And this was 2001. But I'm most proud of the entrepreneurs that Selectica Chennai spawned, like Orangescape by Suresh Sampadan, multi-million-dollar business today worth tens of millions of dollars in India, and there were many other entrepreneurs like him that Selectica Chennai spawned. In 2007, my Selectica Chennai general manager, Dr. I. Goundan, started AGN School in his village of Konganapuram, Salem. And my wife, Kalpana, and I decided that village children should get the world's best facilities and education. So we funded the computer lab with 20 personal computers in this village. And AGN School today has 1,500 students, and its students, believe it or not, these village students are today the top students of Tamil Nadu. They compete with Chennai's best schools, and they rank among the top 5 students every year in the matriculation exam. And I'm more convinced than ever before that if we have high expectations of our employees and our children, they will perform even better than we believe was possible. The best thing that happened in my career was taking on the entrepreneurship jump 35 years ago. There is no more satisfying a career than taking an idea and building a company with hundreds of employees, customers, and share owners around the world. Opti, and then Selectica, and then Dino were all wonderful experiences. All 3 of them had subsidiaries and customers in India. But the best thing for me is that I am now teaching entrepreneurship at IITs and VNIT Nagpur and at Thai chapters in India all year round. Over 3,000 students have taken my 1-year entrepreneurship courses, and so many have started exciting startups. But the world for business is changing all over again, and only entrepreneurs can provide the path in the new global world order. Nitin, what are these forces that are driving the world to a new global world order?
Raj, you're so right. The world is changing, and what is stunning is even the changes just only in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it can help India tremendously if government and entrepreneurs can seize these opportunities that are coming about because of this change. Mm. The usual changes are the ones we all mentioned: pandemic, inflation, ascendance of China, and many others, oil prices, energy, inflation, and all of that. But let me particularly focus on China. There is a very stark recognition by businesses and governments in the world that they must find an alternative to China in terms of its manufacturing and supply chain for a couple of reasons. First, China is alienating so many neighboring countries by using its military might to create skirmishes, and has created a big backlash against China. It's punishing loan terms now have come back to haunt many countries across the world. Sri Lanka is a good example. It now owns ports. In Pakistan, it owns electricity generating plants, and it's about to shut down the entire electricity in Pakistan unless it's paid. It owns many rare mineral mining companies, and the mines themselves. It also owns the steel, coal, magnesium, cobalt mine everywhere in Africa and Latin America. This ascendancy of China has become very uncomfortable, and India has a golden opportunity to establish itself is a very viable friend to most of these countries. India, however, has to become much more friendlier country to do business in, and it has to reform its judiciary, which takes years and years before any justice is meted out.
Yeah.
And to seize this opportunity, that's a must. There is a second point. The second point is that for most businesses, they too are now looking at establishing manufacturing in countries other than China. They are tired of stealing intellectual property by China, and China government and businesses working together in concert to steal these properties.
Yeah.
They are also shocked now when China has decided to close down many of its cities as a pandemic rages there and quarantined it, and now many of these same manufacturing plants are essentially closed down, and it has created havoc in the supply chain.
Absolutely.
Trillions of dollars worth of damages are occurring. This is a godsend opportunity for Indian businesses to flourish, but they have to do something right. They have to manufacture consistently high quality goods and have a reliable supply chain.
Yes.
This is something very difficult for India to have achieved. It's making progress, but it's not quite there yet. What China did brilliantly was to establish a complete ecosystem of manufacturing. So they not just had manufacturing plants, but the vendors of those manufacturing plants and their vendors and their sub-vendors, they were all located within China, creating an ecosystem which is very, very hard to transplant.
Yes.
The manufacturers are trying. They have moved, many of them who have moved to Vietnam, to Cambodia, to Laos, the nearby countries, but they are not large enough. My own daughter-in-law, who is in charge of Apple Watch supply chain, is now looking to say, how can I really diversify my sources? They can't eliminate China, but they would like to diversify. And they are having difficulty finding the right ecosystem. And smaller countries like Vietnam cannot help them, but that's the only choice, because in India, when they go, they're not sure they'll get the consistent quality, they're not sure they'll get the logistics straightened out, and even the things like how many manufacturing engineers do you need to really create a manufacturing facility is hard to fathom, because not enough manufacturing engineers are available. So the Indian entrepreneur system in this new changing world order is going to have to work very deeply with government and business partnership to create these pockets of opportunities and create ecosystems. But Raj, what forces do you think are driving the world to this new global order?
Before I answer that, you made a very good point that India's manufacturing ecosystem needs to improve in a lot of areas. And I've been teaching entrepreneurship for about 6-7 years at IITs and VNIT and so on. And a lot of these young engineers, guess where they found the opportunity? Improving our industrial manufacturing weaknesses.
Correct.
Janutech, where one of my entrepreneur students from IIT Bombay, straight out of school, he set up a plant, factory in Mumbai, and is making robots. And he's helping India use robots to do clean chemical plants, to clean sewage plants, to do, believe it or not, cleaning solar panels has become a big business for him. So he is, our IIT engineers and entrepreneurs from all over India have already started this journey.
Very good.
And the point that you made is, I think, understood. There's more such opportunity going to come because of everything that has happened since the big Russian-Ukraine war and the actions. And what has happened is that these actions that have been taken by all the different powers, the different countries, have got secondary consequences. And what I've learned in this high-tech business, that it is really the second order effects of the decisions taken by major powers. In the tech industry, it would be the big giants like IBM, Intel, Microsoft. Google, etc., taking decisions, and then the second order effects is that they have not anticipated or foreseen or they think are not going to have major consequences, is where the entrepreneurs find opportunity. Now we have a disruption at the global level that has happened because big countries are making big, decisions to address this Russia-Ukraine war. So, for example, and other crises that the world has faced in the last few years. For example, COVID pandemic. Pretty much all countries took different kinds of steps to address it. India took one approach, China took another approach, Europe took another approach, and the US decided that they would lock down the whole country, and in order to prevent, their citizens suffering, they had infused $5 trillion of cash into the economy, just handed money to small businesses, large businesses, and individuals as though they were working. So that was a cash infusion. Remember, $5 trillion. The Indian economy is $2 trillion. So this is 2.5 times the entire economy, more money put into the economy. The consumer was obviously happy. Businesses kept on at least paying the bills, keeping the lights on, even though nobody was working. And the stock market, spiked to record highs. But the unforeseen consequence of this has now been uncontrolled inflation, where the consumer price index has quadrupled, which had been steady for 10 years, to 8% and higher. And the producer price index, which is what manufacturers buy from each other, has gone up more than 11%. Obviously, it's going to be transferred to citizens, consumers at some point. But inflation, which has happened, is like a cancer, which can destroy the wealth of a country, destroy the savings of its citizens, and everybody is now, the Reserve Bank is now focused on tightening money and interest rates, which is now going to create stagflation. So there are unintended consequences from how you address the problem. For example, take a look at how countries addressed the Ukraine war, right? Different approaches. Everybody took a different approach. But the US and West decided that they would focus on economic warfare. They have weaponized the dollar by sanctioning Russian banks, virtually confiscating half of the Russian central bank reserves of over $300 billion, ejecting Russian banks from the SWIFT system, and impacting the ability of Russian businesses to import or export goods or services across the globe. But this could foretend the end of the petrodollar based global financial system. This entire weaponization of the dollar made Russia realize, and other countries like India and Saudi Arabia and China and other countries, that it is not safe to keep their money in dollars and euros in rich countries. But what's going to be the consequence of that? The US has got a very high debt level in order to provide a good social welfare net, and this debt has to be paid for, which is going to raise interest rates and become harder and harder to pay if other countries are not willing to pitch in. Finally, the West is also trying to ban Russian energy to stop the inflow of $1 billion a day. But this is going to enable China and India to get access to abundant, cheap Russian raw material to drive their industrialization. So basically, these unintended second-order consequences, along with the points that you made, are creating the foundation for a new global order. And this new global order is something that entrepreneurs need to understand. So, Nitin, can you give a perspective of what will be India's role, impact in this new global order? let me actually go ahead and talk a little bit more, which is what is this new global order that is going to result from all of these decisions? One of the charts that Nitin you shared with me was the share of the global GDP for the last 2,000 years by different countries. Believe it or not, India had over 30% and China had 25% share of the global GDP for the first 1700 years. But after colonization, both countries bottomed out at less than 5% in spite of having 40% of the global population. But over the last 50 years, both countries have turned the corner. China is now getting to 20% and zooming ahead, and India is also moving along, but only to 7% at this point. The key for China, as Dr. Nitin Mehta has talked, it's all about their move to dramatic industrialization and the huge workforce that China has harnessed faster than India to put it to work. But India has emerged as a major software supplier, and the new global order gives India now the preferential access to raw materials to also jump on the industrial bandwagon. And the next generation of intelligent products and weapons based on hardware, plus AI, ML, and big data that India is so good at. So, Nitin, it would be useful for the audience to know if we can give them some clues as to which entrepreneurial opportunities or which entrepreneurial threads they should target.
Happy to do that. I mean, let me, entrepreneurship is a word that's used so often. Maybe it'll be useful for audience to allow me to define it a little bit more interestingly. Because most of the times, Raj, people define entrepreneurship such as he's a risk taker. Others define them in the personal terms, such as entrepreneur is an achievement-oriented person. Yeah. He's an optimist. He wants to be independent, wants to be his own boss. Perhaps the family background is all about entrepreneurship, etc.
Right.
But for me, a very useful and a unique way to think about entrepreneurship, that definition comes from Harvard Business School by a professor called Howard Stevenson. He is considered to be the godfather of entrepreneurship studies at Harvard. And I was very fortunate to have studied under him. Wow. And I was his research assistant.
Wow.
And a teaching assistant.
I use this quote all the time, by the way.
And it's a very insightful quote. Very few people have heard of it, so I want to define it in some detail for the audience.
Great.
According to Professor Stevenson, entrepreneurship, it's a very simple one-line definition. Entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity beyond the resources controlled. As simple as that. It is about people who pursue a solution or a dream despite the apparent challenges or barriers and focus on the mission with a sense of urgency and deliver high growth enterprises. So let's take three critical words from Harvard's or Professor Stevenson's definition of entrepreneurship. Definition, as you remember, was entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity beyond resources controlled. Pursuit implies a singular, relentless focus. Very critical for entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Singular, relentless focus. Entrepreneurs often perceive a short window of opportunity. And I'll come back to that again because the speed matters.
Yes.
They need to show tangible progress to attract resources. And the mere passage of time consumes the limited cash balance. Right. So longer you wait to get your venture off the ground, the salaries are still getting paid, the rent is still getting paid, cash is diminishing. Yeah. So the relentless focus is very critical. And consequently, entrepreneurs must have a sense of urgency that's seldom seen in established companies.
Yes.
It's not about, well, I'm on vacation, somebody is not well, let's talk about 3 weeks from now. It's here and now. And it's very important for entrepreneurs to not be a victim saying, I can't do it because I've told someone it's not happened yet. They have to figure out resourcefully what to do. It's like a commando that is going on a mission, and they are not going to wait to blow up that bridge. They have to figure out how to do it, no matter what the barriers are.
Exactly.
So that's the pursuit, sense of urgency. The opportunity was the second important word. Opportunity implies offering that is novel in one or combination of 4 ways, any one of those. And it has to be novel. Opportunity may entail pioneering a truly innovative product, so it's a product centered, devising a new business model. So for example, Uber or Ola came up with a new business model. Third is creating a better or cheaper version of an existing product. And fourth is targeting an existing product to a new set of customers. Those are the opportunity in general. And the last one was beyond the resources control, pretty important piece.
Yes.
Because invariably people, companies have a lot of resources, perhaps families have resources. How do Indian entrepreneurs who don't have all the resources that they control, how do they harness those?
Yes.
Because there is a resource constraint. And when you start a new venture, founders control their own human, social, financial capital. They bootstrap, they keep expenditures to a bare minimum, they invest only their time, their co-founders' time, and if necessary, initially their personal funds, family funds, and the like. But as they are pursuing this opportunity, they have to then go and raise more money and prove that their venture is something that their customers are willing to buy. So essentially, more money will have to be raised. And the resources, instead of saying, if customer wants expertise A and I don't have it, how do I go find in my ecosystem or outside my ecosystem, use LinkedIn to go find that external opportunity, harness them, and bring it to bear to capture that opportunity. Very central to entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Now, when they are doing this, because there are lack of resources, entrepreneurs have lots of risks. And the risks typically are in 4 kinds. There's a demand risk, which relates to prospective customers' willingness to adopt the solution that entrepreneur is proposing. So there's a demand risk. Will the customer buy? Second is a technology risk, because most of the high growth opportunities are really technologically based. And that is based on engineering or scientific breakthroughs that are required for that solution to come about. The third is the execution risk, very critical one.
Yes.
Because that's where most entrepreneurs do fail, and that is the ability to attract employees and partners. Have that clue, that charisma to attract those people to implement the plans that are in the mind of that entrepreneur so that they can come and become reality. And the last one is usually the financing risk, which is when will I get the external capital on a reasonable terms? Now, all those 4 risks is what entrepreneurs are trying to manage. Their task is to manage this uncertainty, these risks.
Yes.
And by definition, therefore, as I said earlier, entrepreneurs is not a risk taker, but a risk manager. Staging the investments allow entrepreneurs to address this risk sequentially. Get the demand risk right, then get the technology risk right, then get the execution risk right. Once you have done that in bootstrap, go get the financial risk addressed. And only expand resources to require a milestone. So before you put more resources or all resources, start knocking off every one of those risks I mentioned. And then before the next round of funding, reduce that risk. Now there's a new set of information that's required. Right? It's a bit, these are all foundational concepts,
Yes.
but from your perspective, what skills should Indian entrepreneurs develop?
Yeah. So, Nitin, that was a tremendously concise, right on the money description of the opportunity and the challenges for entrepreneurs. And you and I have both been involved with Thai, and we actually in 1992 decided that, you know, in Silicon Valley we need to get our Indian engineers, the 50,000 plus Indian engineers, to start thinking of starting companies. Yes. Rather than being engineers working for other companies. And we have been enormously successful. Right now, 1 in 3 startups in the US has an Indian co-founder. And Indians have just imbibed everything that you explained in this incredibly well. And then about 15 years ago, Thai decided to come to India and decided to start the Indian education process and we have been enormously successful. In fact, today, you know, we started this in 2005, I would say, getting Indian entrepreneurship, technology entrepreneurship in particular, education started in India. And today, almost 15, 17 years later, we are today the number 3rd largest entrepreneurial ecosystem after the US, and China. And we just gave birth to 100th unicorn a few weeks ago. And entrepreneurship in India has developed exponentially over the last 25 years. And our Prime Minister Modi, has been a big champion of Startup India. So right now, every college, every university is encouraged to start incubation centers and start providing an entrepreneurship education. And we can see all of that happening. Now, with the new global order, Indian entrepreneurs have a chance to do something even better. They can now take the leap to becoming the leader in the new global order. And that is really what we are looking forward to, when the next decade, India emerges as the #1 leader in entrepreneurship. And how are we going to go about it? We've got all this entrepreneurship education, incubation centers, the Startup India activities, but now how do we become the #1? So the best long-term bets that entrepreneurs make are to always focus on creating innovative, fast-growing tech companies which are on the forefront of revolutionizing how corporate India functions, right? So if our entrepreneurs can focus on that and become the leaders, then we are well on our way. And these leaders will have to now imbibe leadership skills about how to create an organization, how to create the hierarchy, how to create a leadership structure, how to have clear decision-making lines, how to have clear lines of authority. Just being a participant is not going to be good enough when your aspiration is to be #1. We need the leadership traits within our entrepreneurs so that they can think of what is the future of work, what is the future of business, what is the future of social interaction. So they have to take the leadership role, and I think we are ready for it. Our traditional belief in education is what got India from probably being the 100th on the entrepreneurship ecosystem to #3 in less than 15 years. To become #1, we just need to have the confidence to be leaders. So, Nitin, any other skills that we should be developing?
You know, in this short time, we have given you a lot of things. Yes. So I want to close with just a few things that come to my mind as you think about entrepreneurship. And this is not just about people who are in the industry, but this is about students, about government officials, There are straight pure entrepreneurs, there are intrapreneurs. Some few things to share with you. First and foremost, as I mentioned earlier, is the extreme emphasis on speed and velocity. And let me expand that a bit. Because if you're not fast, your competition will be. And you will be left behind. This is what China has done to India. 60 years ago, 50 years ago, we had advantage of being English-speaking country.
Yeah.
China did not. We should have been the folks who should have become the manufacturing hub for rest of the world because our population was somewhat similar. Our GDP per capita were equal. In fact, we were a little bit higher than China. But either our government or the insular policies of keeping our India closed, we stayed within India. We took our time. Licensing took longest time. We couldn't get telephone for many, many years after we applied. Some of you might remember that. Speed was not our mantra.
Yeah.
The Japanese and then Chinese, speed was their mantra. And when they really embarked on their speed and velocity, they completely conquered and we were completely left asleep. So that's very important. If you're not fast, your competition will be. In a world where everything is moving so rapidly, simply being fast isn't enough. You have to be faster than anyone and everyone. Accelerate until you are up front and then move fast to stay there is the mantra. Now, the other advantage of being fast is that faster you learn, the faster you evolve. Because every time you execute fast, you have gotten to the next step and the next step, and your evolution of what to do next is also faster. So that becomes the ultimate weapon in the business. A good example is just two companies you would know. Google is fast, General Motors is slow. Tesla is fast, General Motors is slow.
Yeah.
And so startups are fast. Big companies are typically slow.
Yeah.
Most important is to rethink that mantra. As General George Patton in Second World War said, a good plant violently executed now is better than a perfect plant next week. So that's the first skill and the mindset, bias for action that I would strongly recommend. The second is the fail fast culture. So if you are speedy and if you fail, then you will get a chance to do something again. So if you fail once in 1 year, you fail only once. But if you fail every week because you're moving very fast, you've got 52 chances to get better. That's what Spider does.
Yeah.
The third one is iterate and reiterate and reiterate. Don't take something that's done and say, I'm done. Continue to improve. Yeah. And that also means that do lots of low-cost experiments. Because if you have a very high-cost experiment, very large capital commitment, then the cost of failure is very high. But if you have a low-cost experiment, and so design your thinking, design your venture to fail fast, to reiterate, to talk to the customer, go with the speed. That's kind of the generic advice. And then deploy modularly. Because if it takes something 6 months to deploy versus 1 day to deploy, obviously now all the things I just talked about earlier, fail fast, iterate, reiterate, low-cost experiment, all of them work. So modular deployment is important. And the last one that I would say amongst many that we can talk about, and I'm concerned about the time, but the deliver to the customer effectiveness, value in the shortest time possible. If that can be done, that is fantastic. Raj, I know we are close to 30 minutes. Perhaps you can summarize.
Yeah, so I would say that, I wish, Nitin, both of you and me,
Yes.
was just starting a life career. Because there's nothing that would excite me more than the opportunity that is sitting on our plates right now. With all the skills that Nitin talked about, all the understanding of what it takes to create a company and to set new standards, global standards in this flat world, and then to have this big disruption happen, right? So the big disruption that is happening and the new world order that is being created, where India should have enormous access to raw materials from Russia. Raw materials that were going to Europe and US are now coming to India and China. So we used to import 33,000 barrels of oil in December of 2021. By March, we had 300,000 barrels of oil coming from Russia. In April, we had 700,000 barrels of oil coming from Russia. And that too at a price that was discounted by 30 to 50% compared to the world markets, compared to what US spends and what Europe spends to manufacture the equipment. This kind of competitive cost structure advantage is not something that, not an opportunity that India can lose, and entrepreneurs are the ones who are going to take advantage of this opportunity to, reindustrialize and jump ahead in the industrial world. And why would China not benefit? I think there is something unique that India has got that China doesn't have. Amazing and pool of software engineers with expertise in AI, ML, big data, cloud, etc., etc. So, and all the new industrialization is going to be a hardware software solution, and that's where our Indian engineers and entrepreneurs have got this big advantage. So put all of this together, there is a new disruptive world order coming together, and we really are praying, and we know, and actually we have the confidence that our Indian engineers and Indian entrepreneurs are going to steam ahead to become #1 in entrepreneurship within a decade. So wishing all of you the best and great success in the new global order.
And hope you have a great day ahead. Raj,
thank you.
What a pleasure.
Wonderful.
Thank you.